Hello, everybody, and welcome to Happy Hour at Happy Hour. It is June 10th, and we've got a fun slate of games tonight. The Brooklyn Nets taking on the Milwaukee Bucks in Milwaukee, Game 3 up 2-0. And then later tonight, the nightcap back in Utah, the Jazz and the Clippers. This is Jake Micah, as always, joined by Donovan Holden, and we're going to get right into it here. We will start off with Brooklyn and Milwaukee. Brooklyn versus Milwaukee tonight, 3.5-point underdogs. The Brooklyn Nets are. Donnie, we've been talking about it all day. We're very, very surprised that the Brooklyn Nets are underdogs in this game. So what is Vegas thinking that we're not? Like, what do you think the Bucks are going to be doing differently tonight that they kind of deserve the respect to be favorites at home after the show, especially the showing last game?
Yeah, and it was weird too because last game it was almost a pick 'em for the spread, and then it ended up being a 40-point victory for the Brooklyn Nets. I actually like. You didn't say this anywhere online or anything today, but you texted me earlier and you said, the line might be the way it is because what we saw happen to Brooklyn in Game 3 against the Boston Celtics. They were able to get their first win and only win the first time they came back to Boston. The crowd was in it. Adjustments were made from the road. Everyone likes to play at home. That's when Jason Tatum put up 50 points. So, I mean, that's just what I'm thinking for Vegas tonight is they see the Bucks going home. They see, maybe a change of pace, but I don't know. I think being a favorite is one thing, and then being a 3.5-point favorite is another. I think it's very generous. I think it's a tasteful looking bet, but it's also scary because it's like, well, why are they this 3.5-point favorite? What does Vegas know, right? That's the question. I think those are the things on my mind, or why the line might be the way it is, but I don't know, man.
and that's exactly that. Like Stevie was in there too, talking with us earlier. I don't know, man. Like, I just don't understand it. There's nothing that shows me that Milwaukee has played up to the standard and been able to look like a favorite. Even nothing going into the series. I honestly didn't think they'd be a favorite in any of these games, but especially after the showing that they had, I figured like at least a pick 'em, right? Like, it at least has to, if you're going to give them any respect, like at least just give them a pick 'em at home, whatever. It just doesn't make sense to me. Going forward into this game, I really don't know. Like, obviously, like the kind of adjustments they need to make might not be enough because no one has been able to slow down Brooklyn really at all except that Game 3 in Boston. And that might be the blueprint, but Milwaukee hasn't shown the willingness to defend Brooklyn like that. We talked about it the last time we talked about Milwaukee. They go super big because they think that Game 1 and Game 2, they've dominated in the paint. Game 2, they 52 points to 38 for Brooklyn inside the paint. 52 out of 86 points in the paint that's a huge percentage. What did it do for them, though? And it's just like they're not playing the same style of basketball that Brooklyn's playing, and it's hurting them in the long run.
Yeah, no doubt there. And I don't know. I think a lot of what goes into this game and a lot of what I've been paying attention to, and I don't even know if I agree with it at this point, but it is a great storyline, and it does, whether everyone agrees with it or not, it does have some truth to it. This is a big Giannis game. Like, whether he performs poorly or performs really well, like a lot of people are saying this could hurt or help his legacy. And by the way the series is going so far, it's gonna hurt his legacy. I mean, there's already been, people throwing out all these crazy takes that after, mind you, this guy is a back-to-back MVP, and now people are saying he can't be a number one option on a championship team. Kind of crazy that we've already gotten to that after, they sweep the first series and now they're down 0-2 to maybe one of the most offensively talented teams we've ever seen. At some point, I feel like the argument's a little unfair, but at the same time, like, I kind of agree this might be crucial to Giannis's legacy. I mean, if it is a clean sweep for the Nets and the Bucks don't show up in any of these games here.
No, the one thing you did say about this, and I think that might be an important touch point going forward into the playoffs and how we remember this playoffs, is that is it just the case that this Brooklyn team, even without a healthy James Harden, is just one of the best offenses that and best put together, well-oiled machines that we've ever seen in an NBA playoff scenario? Because really, like, there's no matchup that they can't. It doesn't look like there's a matchup that isn't favorable to them, especially when Kevin Durant's playing the way he is. I mean, Kevin Durant's the best player in the world right now, and he's showing that. He's scoring 32 points a game on over 55% from the field. Like, that's ridiculous. That's like Kareem Abdul-Jabbar like type numbers. Like, that's the kind of the level that he is at right now. Yeah. And the rest of that team is built so perfectly around him to accentuate those skills. It might not even be the fact that Giannis isn't doing enough, or that these guys aren't doing enough. And they didn't shoot the ball well from three last game, and that's really going to hurt them. Like, it was 50% for Brooklyn, only 29 for Milwaukee. That's going to get you ran out of the building every single night of the week. But it could just be that this Brooklyn team is just on another level that none of these teams are really going to be able to reach.
Yeah, and it's crazy because we talk about just, how just ungodly this Brooklyn Nets team is and how fantastic they are and the offensive firepower they have. But let me read for you this starting lineup, and I believe it's been this starting lineup all series, and this is what they're rolling with tonight. Kyrie Irving, Bruce Brown, Kevin Durant, Joe Harris, and Blake Griffin. Now, if you said this was their starting lineup at the beginning of the season, I don't think it would be turning many heads. I mean, we've known for 2 years now that the two stars in Brooklyn have been Kyrie and KD. And then they traded away a lot to get James Harden. That they watched Jared Allen walk out the door. Karis LeVert walked out the door. And then, of course, they haven't had Dinwiddie. But I think it gets to a certain point where people are giving them their credit, but we can talk about Kyrie and KD all game. I do want to shed some light on guys like Bruce Brown, Blake Griffin, because, I mean, it's just good to see those poster dunks from Blake last game, and just people who thought he was washed up. And now I don't like that he went to Brooklyn, because I think he could be better than that, and he could be serviceable on a bunch of teams. But he's there, and he's performing. At least he's playing well. And then Joe Harris, I mean, he's one of the best shooters in the game, but he's doing his job. Like, he's knocking down the open shots. And then you have guys like Landry Shamet coming off the bench. Mike James, who is signed to a 10-day contract at the end of the season, and he's playing notable minutes in this series. So, I mean, We do really have to credit the Nets roster up and down. And then, of course, Steve Nash, probably one of the easiest coaching jobs anyone will ever have with this team, but he's still getting it done. And he sounds a lot more animated and into it, and he just sounds smarter almost when they do the huddles and he has the mic on them. Like, it just seems like everything is clicking. And of course, what better time than in the second round to have all your guys come together. And they're doing this without James Harden is my biggest point. And everyone, including Kyrie and KD, are stepping up. So it's just truly scary.
Yeah. So I think we're both in line. We've both been puzzled by this line all day, and we're riding with Brooklyn and for Brooklyn to take a 3-0 lead. Milwaukee needs to make an adjustment tonight. They've got to play smaller. They've got to try to match the size of Brooklyn and play with their pace. I think that they can do that. I think if Giannis is the biggest guy on the floor for both teams, and you could put a lineup out there with, Giannis at the 4 or at the 5, and you could have PJ Tucker, Chris Middleton, Drew Holiday, and then anybody else that's not Brook Lopez or one of their bigs. Like anybody else. They're really missing Dante DiVincenzo because he would fill out that perfect lineup, I think. But just that lineup is just going to have to be something like that, because otherwise Brooklyn's just going to keep blitzing them and the ball movement has just been killing those guys when they've got too many bigs on the floor. But Coach Bud has not been a guy to make a lot of adjustments. So we'll see what happens tonight. Milwaukee's back's really against the wall. They've been in this position before. We've seen it. Let's see if they can respond better, or if it's going to be another disappointing year in Wisconsin.
Step up.
They really do. I mean, Middleton's just been brutal for the first couple of games.
I feel like as much as we can say it about Coach Bud not making adjustments and Giannis flopping in the playoffs years past, like, it's getting consistently that Chris Middleton is like this all-time scorer and like can take advantage of small guards. And now it just seems like year in, year out, he's just not performing to that level that he can clearly play at. So, I mean, as much as, yeah, this is a Giannis legacy game, is this going to shake up his legacy, the two-time MVP? What is he doing? I mean, he needs his guys. I talked about how Brooklyn was getting their guys. Everyone up and down that roster is stepping up. He needs at least his co-star, like the second best player on this team. You could argue Drew Holiday's, second, third, that they're interchangeable there, but you know what I mean.
Yeah. And yeah, he needs those guys to step up and score with these other guys. Like Giannis is not gonna be able to score from the perimeter like that. And Drew Holiday is really not as a potent of a scorer from the perimeter. It needs to be Middleton. Somebody needs to step up for this team. Maybe Bryn Forbes. Maybe they get a bench game from one of these guys. I mean, that they could use that because the Nets have been getting them too. Let's get into the late game tonight. The Clippers in Utah again. Utah -2.5. It was a great game in Game 1. Utah down at the half by 13. Storm back. Donovan Mitchell with 45 points on 16 of 30 shooting. This game, I mean, you want to talk about how the other series has been lopsided. This series looks like it's going to be nothing, but it looks like it's kind of shaping up to be a classic, to be honest. And I've been thinking that beforehand. The Clippers have been one of the favorites in the league for the last couple of years. The Jazz are obviously the higher seed, but they're the team with a lot more to prove going forward. So Game 2 tonight, do you think the Clippers respond?
Man, I don't know. I think I got Utah winning another close one tonight at home. Just the way Mitchell played last game, and I don't know, that environment. D-Wade coaching on the sidelines, like I don't know. The playoff run they're having has reminded me just a lot of what the Phoenix Suns are doing out there in the Valley. Like they just seem to have all the right things that with a playoff team that's clicking. Like your leading scorers getting buckets at will, your leaders leading like crazy, and then just the home environment. Like we saw it in the first 2 games for the Suns. That's why I'm kind of making the comparison here. And then I think we'll see it again tonight in Utah. I don't know if Donovan Mitchell will go for another 45 tonight, but I don't know. I don't think if the Jazz do get it done, that'll be easy. But I don't know. I think it's going to be a lot of home team wins in this series, opposed to the last series that the Clippers played. Where it was almost all. Was it all away wins?
Except Game 7.
Okay, Clippers, yeah, they won the last one at home. So, and we should note that Mike Conley is out again. So maybe that's a factor. It wasn't a factor in Game 1. But yeah, I'm going to go back to the same thing I said. If the Clippers want a chance, PG and Kawhi need to play very well. I know we're putting a lot on PG. Kawhi didn't play great in the first game. I think he only had like 14 points like midway through the third quarter of that game. And there was games in the Mavericks series where he's scoring 40 plus. So, they need their stars to show out. I'm going Utah tonight though.
Yeah, the scoring for the Clippers in Game 1, Kawhi 23 points, Paul George 20 points, Paul George 4 of 17 shooting, Marcus Morris 4 of 14 shooting. He only had 9 points. Kawhi was only 9 of 19 from the field. And then Luke Kennard was their best player off the bench. He was 7 of 9, 18 points off the bench, but only in 29 minutes. Maybe those minutes go up. Reggie Jackson only had 17 minutes in Game 1, which is kind of surprising. He was effective in those minutes, but I think defensively it looked like Utah was hunting him in pretty much every matchup, especially Donovan Mitchell. Like Reggie Jackson's not doing anything against Donovan Mitchell. I think that we got to see from Ty Lue again, like we did in the first series. Kawhi needs to be on Mitchell from the start of the game to the end of the game, like he did on Luka. It was a bunch of different matchups on Mitchell, and he got free in the second half. And I know that this Utah offense is a lot more potent than the Mavericks offense is. Like obviously Luka was the engine and kicking it out to people, but that team's not well built around Luka. This team is perfectly built around Donovan Mitchell to accentuate his strengths.
For a better setup.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's why, I mean, when he puts up 45, it's like, it's an impressive 45 for sure, but he has it so easy compared to some other superstars that he's compared to in the league. So go for it.
My thing for Mitchell is like, we're talking about D Wade coaching him on the sidelines and him having a fantastic game one, 45 points. And he's really been on a tear ever since Utah sat him game one of that Memphis series, and he was so pissed off about it. I kind of challenged him after that. I said, be mad about it, fine that you sat out, but show out. He didn't necessarily the game after that where I really wanted to see it, but since then he has been red hot. And I think one of the most impressive things about it is just his ability to let these elders and his coach actually coach him. Like, he's a very coachable player. And I think, not that many young superstars in the league would necessarily ignore D Wade on the sideline like that, but I think a lot, maybe just too confident in themselves. And it's not as easy to coach young stars nowadays. A lot of ego and, a lot of me, selfish players. I think we see a lot of it. Not that it can be good sometimes, people believing in themselves, but Donovan Mitchell has shown that he's a star in these playoffs so far, and he's coachable. Quinn Snyder is one of the best coaches in the league, and we saw last game, he pulled Mitchell aside and said, play excellent on defense. Your offense will come. Like, that's how good of a player you are. And Mitchell did it. Like, he's getting it done on both ends of the floor. And it's impressive that he can take words of wisdom from his coach, listen to Dwayne Wade on the sideline, and then just go make it happen like seconds later. Like, Mitchell is doing, I think, a lot more than people realize in these playoffs.
And I think we've talked about it a lot this year, but I think that this has been something that we've been expecting from this dude. Like, it seems like he had that in him, like just the mannerisms and just the way he carries himself, that he would be ready for a moment like this. And in game one, he looked ready. Like, he looked like he was ready to go out there. And yeah, he's a do everything guy. Like, he can create his own shot out of literally nothing. And there's not many guys like that in the league, but he can do it so many ways. He's not just a 3-point bomber, even though he shot 15 threes in game one, which is absurd. You don't usually see that for him, but you could just tell you could tell from the jump he was feeling it from three. I think he hit his first 2 threes. And then I remember at the very beginning of the game, he pulled up like on a ridiculous 3, and it was short, but you could just tell it's like, that's the mindset he needs. That's the mindset. And I'm sure that's the mindset that the team wants him to have going forward. So it's going to be interesting. We talked about it with Luka against these Clippers. Is he enough of a star to outshine the rest of the other 2 stars on that Clippers team? It didn't end up working out for him later in that series, but this team is so much more built, so much better built. And Stevie here, Mitchell proving the bubble was no fluke. He's damn right. He is damn right. That's what we've talked. That has been the storyline we've tried to follow all year, who are the bubble guys and who aren't. And Mitchell was game no matter what. Like, he's game no matter what.
He's bold.
And if we're looking at after tonight a 2-0 series lead for the Jazz and the Suns, I mean, no one would have expected before the season that we could have. I mean, we had the Suns ranked pretty high. But no one, if you would have told anybody, Jazz, Suns, Western Conference Finals, book it, no one, people will be looking at you like you have 4 heads, like just no possible way. And it might be the best series we have. And we were thinking about the Brooklyn-Milwaukee series, but a Jazz-Nets series or a Jazz-Suns series might be the most electric series that we could have remaining, just because those teams are just both so deep and both so much star talent at the top trying to prove themselves. Like, it could be a really fun series going forward. But that's obviously down the line. Let's see what the Clippers respond tonight. We haven't seen the Clippers really been able to respond in these moments when they've been pressed. I mean, they escaped that series against the Mavs, but they should have really, looking at those 2 squads, they should have handled that team. So this is a team that they are even with at the very least, and probably a little bit worse off then. So what do they do with their backs against the wall? That place is going to be rocking in Utah again tonight. And I'm with you. I think I got the Jazz again tonight. Take a 2-0 lead going back to LA.
Yeah, me too. I'm with you there. And like, I want to say we're almost a little too harsh on the Jazz earlier in the season, but I don't think we were. Like, we were just saying, like, it was almost like every podcast or, preview or recap that we did, it was like, damn, like, what new edge or storyline can we come at the Jazz with right now? Because they were winning so much and they were just blowing out opponents. Mitchell was having unbelievable games. Gobert was, having like over 5 blocks and like 15 rebounds. Like, they just got boring to us at a point. It was like, yeah, that's the Utah Jazz. They're kind of beating everyone. So I don't know. We weren't necessarily ragging on them. We were almost like, just prove it. And so far they have. I got to ask you though, do you think Shaq's going to try to take credit for Donovan Mitchell doing so well? Or you think people are going to be like, yo, Shaq, like, you're a dick. Like, this dude was going to show out whether you said something to him no matter what.
No, if they go to the Western Conference Finals, Shaq is 1,000% going to show up and be like, well, I challenged Donovan at the middle of the season, and he responded. That will be a statement that comes out of Shaq's mouth. That was my Shaq impression. It wasn't great.
He's gonna wear like a $10,000 suit, like 3-piece suit, like all Utah Jazz colors. Like Mitchell's my guy. Like
Shaq's got the affordable suits. He was hyping him up the other day.
Oh, true, yeah. Sears, big and tall section, yeah. Or JCPenney, I mean.
Yeah.
I grew up going to the JCPenney in my mall and just huge cutouts and like fat heads of Shaq like all over the place in the big and tall section.
My first pair, in my fourth grade basketball, when my basketball career started, my first pair of shoes was a pair of Shaqs from
makes the affordable picks.
It does. It was great. I had no complaints then. So, all right, yeah. So we've got the Jazz and the Nets. Well, Nets not the favorites. Kind of weird, but I think both of the teams that we've been leaning towards the whole way. It's going to be a fun night of games. I'm excited to see what Milwaukee does with their backs against the wall, and I'm always excited to see what the Clippers have in a response. We'll see what happens going forward. So that'll do it for this preview. About 5-ish minutes from tip in Milwaukee. So enjoy that game. Follow us along at Happy Hour Hoops 1. Obviously, we'll be covering the games tonight and over the weekend. For Donovan Holden, Jake Micah here, signing off. Have a great night, fellas.